Quita Culpepper and here with Mark and Tony, and we are interrupting our regular newscast with some important breaking news that so many may have waited decades to hear. Authorities are telling us that it's a resolution to one of the defining events in Austin's history.
Yeah, KVUE News has confirmed investigators with the Austin Police Department believe they have solved the infamous yogurt shop murders after nearly 34 years.
Finally, an answer to this question that has haunted Austin for decades. Who killed these girls? Jennifer and Sarah Harbinson, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers, back in December of 1991.
A senior investigative reporter Tony Plahetsky is here with us with what he's learned about this break in the case. And Tony, it is hard to overstate the significance of this news that we're delivering right now.
Mark and Quita, of course, when you think about the yogurt shop murders in Austin, they are interwoven into the fabric of the city. It was a defining moment for the city. There has been a search for answers for decades. And to reach this point, I want to tell you how they got here. Law enforcement believe that they have been able to finally find this killer through what experts call genetic genealogy. I know a lot of people have heard about this because it's been used to solve other crimes, other cold cases across the country. Now, let me tell you a bit more about what has happened within the past couple of hours. Authorities are now prepared, they say, to name a man they believe who is a serial killer who is responsible for these deaths. They say he is responsible for at least 3 other murders across the nation. That man, his name is Robert Eugene Brashers. He had no known ties to Austin other than these murders. He did not live here. He did not work here. He died by suicide in early 1999. That's about 8 years after the yogurt shop murders. This timing is tragically noteworthy, and I want to tell you why. It's also about 8 months before Austin police charged 4 other men with the yogurt shop murders, cases that, of course, we know ultimately collapsed over the next decade. This afternoon, it is our understanding that law enforcement has been in touch with the families of the yogurt shop murder victims to inform them of this development. That has been tantamount to their priority after confirming this DNA analysis in recent days. They have wanted to get to the families and make sure that they heard it directly from law enforcement, had all of this explained to them before the information was made public. And so that is what has been happening this afternoon. Austin Police Department, we do understand that they are prepared to notify the public in an official way this afternoon. They are also looking at conducting a wider news conference early next week where they will explain to the public the DNA evidence that has been used to, again, solve in their minds and in their words, these yogurt shop murders, a defining moment for Austin, once and for all.
You know, Tony, you mentioned that this was a defining moment. This has been in the fabric of Austin's history here. Let's go back over what happened because, as you know, Austin has changed a lot in the last 34 years, and many of our viewers may not know the significance of that night back in 1991.
Yeah, 1991, and I can't believe it's yogurt shop, not very far from here, actually, in North Austin along Anderson Lane. 2 of the young girls were working at that yogurt shop, again, December 1991, and the 2 others, including the younger sister of one of the employees, she was there visiting. Authorities have said for decades that around closing time, a gunman came in and forced the girls into a storage room in the back of the shop. They were ordered to disrobe, they were bound. Each of them was shot in the back of the head. The store and the girls were doused with gasoline and set ablaze. That made this case so difficult to investigate because so much of the evidence was destroyed during that fire. But steadfastly, over decades, authorities have worked to reach the conclusion that they say they are reaching today. But it is, of course, noteworthy. And as these murders are part of Austin's history, unfortunately, there is also a part of Austin police history that will undoubtedly become part of the conversation, and that is in 1999, 4 young men were arrested and charged with these murders, and it is our understanding that they are going to be essentially declared innocent. Keep in mind, one of them, Robert Springsteen, was actually convicted and sentenced. I can't overstate this enough. Sentenced to death row, sentenced to die for these murders before the case against him was overturned in the early to mid 2000s, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
And I know the Court of Criminal Appeals, they actually overturned those convictions because the confessions that were used improperly during their trials.
That's right. Two of the men confessed to the murders. They, of course, later recanted those confessions and said that those confessions were coerced by the Austin Police Department. Keep in mind, this police work was being done in the mid to late 90s at a time when there was a lot of conversation about authorities, not just in Austin, but across the country, using tactics that have since been banned, essentially, to try to ascertain confessions from suspected killers. Through the years, as this investigation has proceeded, after their convictions were overturned, after the charges were dropped against them, keep in mind, of course, they have had a dark cloud over them through all these years, being labeled a murderer. We know that one of them, Maurice Pierce, actually died in 2010 after a confrontation with an Austin police officer. He actually stabbed that police officer in the neck before the police officer returned fire. But there is a picture, and again, this video that we have goes back decades, that this case has dominated headlines off and on. And I also want to point out that this case has drawn so much fascination, not just here in Austin, but across the country. It has, as we know, been the subject of multiple documentaries, online chat forums where people are working to solve the murders. But most recently, as many people in our community know, there has been an ongoing HBO documentary as well that has again put the national spotlight on this case. And a lot of people have asked me, is any of this tied to the documentary? The answer to that is no. And keep in mind that this DNA testing has been going on off and on for a number of years, and most importantly, the work that has gone on to this investigation has been quite literally decades in the making, with a generation of investigators examining what happened.
Tony, it is 5 o'clock right now. And for our viewers that are joining us for the 5 o'clock newscast, you have reached us in the middle of a big breaking development in a 34-year-old cold case in the Austin area. Someone has been named as a murderer in the yogurt shop murders from 1991.
That's right. 4 young girls working at an I can't believe it's not yogurt shop killed. And finally, 34 years after this horrific crime, they have named a suspect, a person they believe did these killings.
And unlike other investigative efforts that have gone into this, what authorities are now relying on is genetic genealogy. I know there are a lot of crime buffs out there who know that a lot of these cold cases across the country have been solved by using this type of DNA, where family connections are loaded into various databases. And it is our understanding that that has now played a pivotal role in the ability for authorities to finally solve this murder case, which they do plan to declare it closed in coming days. Again, authorities at this point are planning a formal notification to the public, likely in coming minutes later this evening, and then a more formal announcement coming early next week, in which authorities plan to explain the entire sequence of events here and why they are firmly in belief that they have solved this crime once and for all. I want to tell you a little bit about the man they say is responsible for this, because this is an important part of what is happening here today. And I think also, Mark and Quita, an added tragedy to this is that that person, if he was in fact the killer, will not be able to be held responsible because he died by suicide in 1999. authorities actually have linked him to 3 other cases across the country. But what is interesting is that he was never linked to any murder in Austin or anywhere until the year 2018. So nearly 2 decades after his death, authorities have been able to link him to the crimes, they say, using genetic DNA testing.
His name never came up previous to that year.
Never came up previous to 2018 and those murder cases, but it's important to note that in this 34-year investigation here in Austin, he was never identified as a possible suspect, never questioned by police, never had the suspicion of authorities investigating this case. But for the DNA evidence, authorities do not believe he would have ever been firmly linked, they say, to the yogurt shop murder. So it is really, I think, Mark and Quita, underscores just how much DNA testing and forensic evidence has changed the game in investigating murders, and in particular, these cold case murders.
Now, I know that he has been identified by DNA here, but they also identified him for 3 other murders in the Midwest as well.
That's right. 3 other murders, of course, the 4 here, taking that number now to 7. And authorities across the country now, this will expose this name and this evidence to them for them to go back into their files across the country. And that's one of the things that investigators across the nation, frankly, are trying to do now. They are trying to establish where else he lived, where else he may have worked, where else he may have traveled, and to determine whether or not he could have been in those communities that have similar cold cases of women with a similar MO. And that is one thing, that is a piece of work that is happening right now.
And we actually have some of the other cases on screen right now. You can see he was implicated in a 1990 murder in South Carolina, a 1997 rape in Memphis, Tennessee, a 1998 double murder in Missouri. And of course, police officials saying all of those cases connected by DNA, genetic, genealogy, and now connecting him to the yogurt shop murders as well.
4 young girls were killed in the yogurt shop murders in that yogurt shop there in North Austin. 2 were working at the shop and the 2 others were visiting. A pair of sisters were among the victims in that case. Such a tragedy that happened in 1991.
And again, when you think of the families of those young women and the amount of trauma, the ups and downs, we found the guys, we didn't find the guys. They've been excluded actually as suspects now. That is one of the things that I think underscores just the tragic nature of all of this. And just to reiterate, that is also one of the reasons that authorities wanted to so quickly get to the families to personally notify them, and that work has been going on by the Austin Police Department throughout the day and in recent hours so that they could have a moment to process this frankly astounding information in many ways prior to making any sort of public announcement.
And I know it's just so bittersweet for their families, for their friends. It's been 34 years. I know they probably never expected to hear this kind of news, and it is bittersweet because I know some of the family members have passed away. And they never knew.
Without answers about who killed their daughters. And I've interviewed, I've been fortunate to interview family members of these young women through the years, and I just know and can feel in my conversations with them just a deep yearning for some sort of resolution. And so again, Austin police say that they believe that they are now able to deliver that resolution in the case. They have been meeting with them again to share this information with them. This again, really extraordinary development in this case that has received so much attention, broke the hearts of so many people in Austin when it happened. and through the years.
And throughout all this, we want to remember the girls as well.
Absolutely.
Their names. They were 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison and her younger sister, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers. 4 young girls who had such promising futures ahead of them. Had a chance over the years as we interviewed the relatives to learn more about them, some of their interests. Eliza wanted to be a model. She loved country music. Jennifer Harbison loved the FAA with her sister. They were raised sheep together. That's how they connected, by their love of farming there. And Amy Ayers loved horses. She was an equestrian, a young equestrian there. So it was always important to remember the lives that were lost, that were snatched away, that had so much potential.
Absolutely.
Definitely stolen. Their
Yeah.
lives were stolen from them. And Tony, I want to go back a little bit and talk more about the 4 young men who were actually accused of this gruesome crime.
Yeah, so let's go back in time to the police investigation. Maurice Pierce, who I mentioned, died after a confrontation with Austin police in 2010, was within days of the murder questioned by police and arrested for having a gun at North Cross Mall. Again, not very far from the yogurt shop, just a few blocks, as a matter of fact. He was investigated at the time, as were some of his associates, but it was not until 8 years later that they were arrested and faced formal charges for the murder. 2 of the men went to trial, were convicted, but the other 2 never stood trial because the cases began falling apart. Again, this is a case that captured so much attention, these arrests. I can remember in the early 2000s, in my early days of my career here in Austin, being outside the jail when Maurice Pierce was released, and him walking out of the Travis County Jail with his attorneys, and then just watching the case through the years as authorities really tried to figure out. And if you talk to investigators who have worked these cases through the years, interviewing them about their beliefs. And what I really found over many years of talking to law enforcement who was involved in this case is that there was really a divide. Some of them steadfastly believed that these 4 men were not the correct suspects. Others did. And so there was a divide. But of course, the attorneys for those men and the men themselves will undoubtedly be very pleased with this news, because they will almost certainly feel it as though it is vindication for them, and will finally remove this cloud, this tarnish that they have now spent decades with in their own lives, trying to build a life with the taint of being an accused killer in this very notorious, very difficult, very tragic Austin murder case.
And for some families, a sense of closure. For others, a bit of frustration that the person who is now the prime suspect named in this will never face justice for this crime.
Exactly, and how they, metabolize that and work through that within themselves is undoubtedly going to be a struggle. But at the same time, these families tragically are accustomed, if you will, to receiving difficult news and having to work through extraordinarily difficult news that has punctuated this case now for nearly 34 years.
Well, now they have received the news that they have been desperately waiting for so long.
Exactly.
Tony, thank you. Obviously, a huge development here in this 34-year-old cold case that was such a defining moment for Austin. As Tony mentioned, we expect Austin police to hold a formal news conference to tell us more about this early next week.
So as we continue to learn more, we'll bring you updates here on air and online on our website, KVUE.com.